Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2, where I have advanced us out of the Kerbin system here so that we could see where our apoapsis, or rather our, not our apoapsis and periapsis are going to be, but specifically so that we can see where our ascending and descending node are going to be. And I've already set us up with an inclination change burn here. So we're currently making our way over to that turn position, and this burn is going to be 863 meters per second, which is about half of what we've got in our first stage here. But this is just going to put us on the same plane as Dres, which is, of course, at a mildly spicy orbit here. So that is definitely something that we are going to be doing. We're about halfway through this turn at this point, and, of course, we have to zoom out all the time, but, you know, KSP2, what are you going to do? We are, of course, going to be burning through this stage fairly quickly, and once we do that, our turning will get a lot better. Our turning has already improved substantially. Now, this lander is really, really overkill for Dres, but that's okay. We should be fine, hopefully. I hope we don't land somewhere super tippy and tip over. That would be awkward. I mean, we did that already once, though, and it was fine? Questionable. It was certainly questionable, but it did end up being okay. So there's that. Now, we're going to be lowering the fuel into the bottom tanks here, but I expect us to not burn very much of this fuel, to be honest. So this is wildly overkill for Dres. Absolutely. Oh, hey, Kerbin. Kerbin's back over here. Wonderful. So we're just going to position ourselves here. It's going to be about a 70-day warp until our inclination change. And we can turn a little bit further here. But this is pretty decent. Let's go ahead and warp to maneuver at this point. Excellent. So now we're like 4 hours away. Now we're about 3 minutes away. That's better, for sure. And the question is, do we want to finish up this turn or do we want to warp? Because we kind of can't do both. I think we're going to finish the turn here. We're very, very close at this point, and I'm just going to warp us forward now. 2 minutes, 1 minute, and we've got about 30 seconds to go. Sure, we can warp a little further. 20, 10, and 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. So this is going to be about a minute and 47-second burn. Understood. Let's warp through that a little bit. Minute 30, 20, 10, and 1 minute to go. Excellent. 40, 30, 20, 10 seconds coming out of the warp. Okay, so our inclination change is very nearly complete at this point. 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay, that should put us at 0.0 or very close to it. Yep. So the next step here is probably to circularize at the apoapsis. I am willing to bet that if we go for this, our timing is horribly wrong. Yeah, we are literally as off as we can be. Okay, that is fine. That's about 2 kilometers per second to get there, but we're only going to be burning about half of that because we're circularizing here for purpose of finding an easier location. Like, finding our encounter a little easier. So we're going to circularize that. That is going to burn off slightly more fuel than what we have in... If we can zoom out here. Slightly more fuel than what we have in this tank. That's fine. We do, of course, need to orient for that, and that is going to be a fairly lengthy turn procedure. But we did burn off about half of the fuel that we had in here, and that is a huge percentage of our weight. So our turning is definitely getting faster, no doubt about that. We're turning at an appreciable rate here, so that looks good. The real question is, where exactly... Oh, there's our node. Okay, that's not going to be too bad to turn to. It could have been worse. It certainly could have been worse. So that looks solid. So once we get there, we are, of course, going to be warping over to this circularization burn. And once we're circularized, then we'll look for a Dres encounter. And that's going to be another roughly kilometer per second to get us there. And Dres itself is slightly elliptical, actually. So we may want to consider tweaking this burn position to be about here and going ourselves slightly elliptical. About here or so. So that we're roughly even distance at all times. I think that's a slightly better burn, to be honest. Okay, so let's get ourselves into that position. It is now going to definitely burn off all of this fuel and some from our lander. That's absolutely fine. We don't need additional fuel from our lander. We have so much fuel on this thing. I suspect that this amount of fuel isn't even correct. We'll find out, but I think we have more than 17,000 meters per second right now. It's a lot. It's a crazy amount of fuel. So we're basically turned at this point. And we're going to begin our warp very, very shortly. It's going to be a 281-day warp, slightly shorter than it was previously when we were just circularizing. I don't think we want to circularize here, though. So let's warp on forward. Excellent. And we're 4 hours away. Okay, let's warp again. 3 minutes. That's slightly better. 2 minutes. 1 minute and 30 seconds. 20, 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. And off we go, circularizing-ish. I mean, not exactly circularizing, right? This is at this point like matching Dres's orbit, setting up for a Hohmann transfer. Wonderful. So I'm going to go up to 10x warp here, and we're going to burn out all of our fuel. We're going to automatically come out of the warp once we are close to losing all of our fuel. There we go. So we've got about 170 meters per second left in this. That is looking great. 100 meters per second. 50. And we're good. So off we go with our nuclear engines. We're going to have pretty decent thrust to weight with the nuclear engines. Boy, they produce a lot of light. I'm always struck by that in KSP2. So much light coming out of these engines. So we've got about 17 seconds of burn time left here. Yeah, our thrust to weight is pretty decent. About 10 seconds of burn time left, and we'll be in our target orbit, or very close to it. Close enough, anyway. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and mark. Okay. So engine shut down, and we're now in approximately our target orbit. Now we're going to have to tweak where we have our overall positions here, but I mean, this is going to be Dres out over here. So the question is, if we were to burn here at this descending node, I don't know why I'm choosing here, but if we were to burn here, what would this feel like? Okay, so that's pretty off. It's going to be an orbit. Okay, so let's just warp to here. I really wish there was a way to add an orbit to your maneuver the way you can in KSP1. That is a very convenient thing. No doubt about that. The ability to add an orbit is really, really, really useful. So we're around to the apoapsis now, and just making our way on through. Why is this pinned open? I have no idea. Whatever. It doesn't matter. So let's exit this warp right now, and I want to see what this looks like if we were to do our burn sometime around here or so. That's pretty close, actually. It's going to need to be a little later than this. but it is definitely pretty close. So a prograde around here is going to need to be slightly later than this even. A little bit more prograde. We're just fishing for that encounter right now. I can't see it underneath the lander label. Okay, cool. I think at this point, we don't actually have an encounter here. Okay, there we go. We were a little bit not far enough on our prograde. That's fine. That's very awkward. It's because of that second encounter. Okay, that was an encounter right there. When I released the button, I dragged it a little bit. Where was that? That is a very minute encounter. Okay, let's see if we can find it with a little bit of radial. Actually, I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. Let's see if we can get that number 1 encounter dialed in instead of the number 2 encounter. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Beautiful. So that gets us an encounter. That's Jewel. I want to go to Dres. That gets us an encounter. And what encounter does that look like? That is, oh my, okay. So we're going to have to dial that in the normal direction for sure. Where's our maneuver at? There it is. Okay. We want this to be relatively equatorial, right? So we want to bring this in like that, and I would like to bring it up maybe a little bit more. We're going to need a smidge of prograde here. Okay, so we can see that we are overshooting on the normal. No doubt about that. Let's bring this on down until we are roughly in plane. Ooh, that was way too much. Until we're roughly in plane with these rings. And then let's bring this in just a bit. That's an impact trajectory. We, of course, do not want that. What is this altitude? 67 kilometers? I mean, Dres does not have an atmosphere, I believe. So that should be fine in theory. Inclination is not perfect, but we can tweak that. I mean, it's not going to be perfect from here, but we can definitely get it a little bit better than this. About here or so. I'm angling to have our periapsis be on this mid-band here. Okay, so that looks fine, but this is going to have to be a very precise burn. We're probably going to have to tune that on the way in because I doubt I'm going to hit it quite that precisely. Let's angle for that turn, or rather, angle for the burn. It'll be a 30-second burn, 562 meters per second. Yeah, that's ballpark of where we expect that to be. Cool. So that is all looking fine for right now. Wonderful. We're going to move on over. We are definitely turning much faster now, although it still might be a little slow for landing. We'll see what ends up happening with that. Although we will burn off some fuel before we get there. No doubt about that. Okay, we're going to warp forward here very shortly, about now. Excellent. And let's get our Hohmann transfer completed. So this is, of course, a very lengthy burn. No doubt about that. I still wish there was a year indicator on this. That would be a useful piece of information. Okay, it's another year. Sure. That would be very useful information, for sure. I have no idea how many years we're warping when we start one of these. Okay, we're about 3 hours away right now. We're going to warp forward a little further than that. We're now about 3 minutes. Much better. 2 minutes, 1 minute, and bring this on down. We're about 15 seconds away from this. Okay. I've definitely gotten closer than that before. But that's okay. As I said, we're going to be angling to get this as accurate as possible, but we're almost certainly going to have to do some tweaking to this orbit as we come in. 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay, so let's head on over at this point to Dres, if we can get zoomed out. There we go. And why are we looking here? Let's look here. Thank you. And this is our target orbit. We'll see how close we get on it. It's a pretty decent target orbit, really, all things considered. It's not amazing, but it'll do. We've got about 13 seconds left on this burn. 12, 11, 10. Okay. So this is going to be very, very sensitive once we get this to a reasonably similar point. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ooh, okay. That is very sensitive. Okay. We're going to flip this over to retrograde, and while we are flipping, I'm going to thrust limit all of these engines down to 1%. So we're going to get that one and this one down to 1%. Okay. So we're flipping over to retrograde at this point, and we're going to pull this back. We should be in roughly the correct inclination, but this is giving us an encounter, and I definitely want to tune that encounter in a little bit. So over to retrograde we go. And we're going to need to change our overall orbit a bit. So it would be fine to be in a big inclination, or rather in a big orbit like this, I suppose. But I want to bring this in a bit. Okay, pinning open that periapsis. Okay, we're going to need to get some normal in there as well. Let's position ourselves manually up over this way a bit. We're not turning very quickly. Okay, I'm shutting down the engine. We weren't turning quite as quickly as I had hoped there, but let's make our way over to, this is anti-normal. I think we actually want normal here. We're going towards anti-normal. Yeah, we definitely want normal. So we need to flip this all the way around. That's fine. And like I said, we're okay with being in a relatively wide orbit here. So I think that's fine, because we do need to do an inclination change, for sure. And inclination changes are more efficient the higher up you are. So that is fine, but of course we're not that concerned about efficiency here. We have so much fuel. I'm really, really not concerned about that. So let's move ourselves over to the normal node for right now. And once we arrive here, we're just going to lift up our destined orbit here a little bit. So we're arriving there about now, and let's commence some burn. About there. Okay, something like that. Now I want to go back to retrograde. So we're going to go back to retrograde and pull this inward a little bit. We could call this good and just work off of that. That is definitely something that we could do. But for the moment, I'm not too interested in that. Also, this mid-band here, is that in plane with the rings? It absolutely is. Okay, so the mid-band is 100% in plane with the rings. Gotcha. Good to know. So we can target the rings as our orbit. Okay, let's bring this in. And looks like we're going a little underneath. That's fine. So I have the rings face on here, and we want this to come into about here. Then we're going to want to go back to normal and get a little bit more normal in here. I'm trying to do our inclination change as much as possible here, because it's going to be far more efficient here than it is going to be over Dres. This is only 288 kilometers. That seems fine. Let's get the ring's edge on. So right about here. And we just want to raise this periapsis until it's about right here in terms of height. So that'll be good. Almost there. Okay. Raising it up. About here. It's not perfect, but it'll do. Cool. So now we need to warp to, let's see, we're coming in this way and going out this way. So that'll be fine. Is this retrograde? It shouldn't matter here, but let's find out. We're coming this way. It is retrograde, but this turns so slowly that I don't think it matters. So, and we've got so much DV, so that should be fine. At this point, what we need to do is we need to warp our way over to arriving in the Dresian sphere of influence, and then we'll think about what our actual orbital changes are going to be. So we need this particular orbit here, and we'll time warp to there. That'll be fine. That'll get us a lot closer, and then we can figure out what this mess of encounters actually is. It'll all be fine. Why are we not getting electric charge right now? We should be. I guess our solar panels are all facing the wrong way. We are getting electric charge. Okay, whatever. KSP2 doing KSP2 things, I guess. So we want to head to just inside the sphere of influence. This is going to turn it off due to proximity to celestial body. That's fine. We want to warp just inside. Once we're inside the sphere of influence, we can start working on our actual orbit here. We're going to need a braking burn, and I'd like to combine that with an inclination change at the same time. And so we can come over to, I want to get edge on these rings. Right about here. Create a maneuver plan, and we're going to bring this guy in with a big old retrograde burn. And of course, we're going to need to... Yeah, go ahead and go here. We're going to need to unthrust limit these. We don't want that to be a 40-minute retrograde burn, right? So we're going to unthrust limit that, and we're going to focus on Dres. I'm actually going to redo this just to make sure that it's good. And we're going to circularize this, but we're going to need to have some amount of normal to it as well. Yeah, we can definitely see the inclination here is not correct. So I want to go edge on over here. And just get that inclination right about there or so. And obviously our circularization is not going to be perfect. Let's just bring our periapsis here down to somewhere around like 60 kilometers is probably decent. What did that do to our inclination? It did adjust the inclination a wee bit. Okay, let's just get this edge on and go like so. This is probably close enough to equatorial here. And 48 kilometers is still fine. Okay, that sounds good. So that's going to be a 22-second burn, only 436 meters per second to get our inclination approximately right. It's not perfect, but also to bring our periapsis down to 50 kilometers, and then we'll circularize that. We're definitely going to wait until our landing site is on the day side, but that will be fine. Okay, let's warp over to this burn. Right about now, we're in position. There we go. There's Dres down there. We're just falling down towards Dres. Excellent. And we're going to be doing this burn in about 3 minutes. So we're going to warp forward a little bit. 2 minutes, 1 minute, and 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Excellent. So this burn is going to have a little bit of normal thrown into it to get ourselves into roughly the correct inclination. It's not going to be perfect, but it doesn't need to be. We'll adjust that on the way in. So that looks good. This just gets us into approximately the right inclination. Now, of course, we're retrograde here, but I don't care, I don't think. Like, if we look at our surface velocity once we're done with this burn, it's probably fine. Our orbital velocity is only 200 meters per second. So I don't think we particularly care. Okay, right about there is our burn point. Looks good. And now we can come up over here and circularize. It is, however, time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And the next episode... Oh, we can do some science here. We may as well. And next episode, we're going to angle for landing right over here. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Andy McGar, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Tommy, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.